We're on to the Sweet 16, Jake. In our last video, I went 2-2 on my picks. You went 2-2 on yours. So we split, but my bracket is still intact with my Elite Eight picks all still alive. But I wanted to know what you thought the biggest surprises were from the first weekend's games.
I think the biggest surprise from the first weekend's games were how few upsets there were in the second round. You know, we're used to seeing March Madness, right? Used to seeing a lot of crazy upsets. And in the first round, there certainly were tons of upsets, right? Grand Canyon got a dub. Oregon got a dub. Oakland beating Kentucky, probably the biggest one of the first weekend, if not for Yale over Auburn, right? So lots of, leaving some out here, but plenty of upsets in the first round. And then in the second round, the only double-digit seed to advance to the Sweet 16 was NC State, and they got to play Oakland in 11 versus 14. So that game was forcibly sending one double-digit seed on, and everyone else lost. It was a huge favorite second round, and I think that was the biggest surprise for me.
So given the fact that the favorites crushed it in the round of 32, do you think it's time to start picking some underdogs, or does this just show that there's a significant gap between the really good teams and then the average ones?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily time to pick the underdogs just because the favorites dominated. Whether or not we like the games is another story. But, we've said all along this season, there's no truly, truly dominant team like there's been in years past. But there are a lot of really, really, really good teams. And I think that's what this tournament has proven so far. That there's 10 to 12 really, really good teams. And look at that. They all made it on to the Sweet 16.
Yeah, well, a team who's proven to be pretty good, Clemson, who's a 6 seed going up against Arizona. It's a 7.5 point line. Clemson was a 2-point dog to New Mexico, and they rolled in that. Then they were a 4-point dog to Baylor. They won that by 8. Are you surprised to see this line at 7.5? Because this is one of the biggest ones outside of UConn for this weekend.
No, not really. I mean, Arizona has been getting big lines all season. They've been getting a lot of respect from the books. And the advanced stats do really like Arizona. Ken Bum has them as the 5th overall best team in the country. And you can really argue 4th, given they have Auburn ahead of them and Auburn's eliminated. Top 10 in offense and defense. They play at a fast pace of play. They got a beast center in Omar Ballo, a point guard in Caleb Love, who's not afraid to fire. Plenty of seniors on the team. They got everything you want to look for in a March Madness contender. But Clemson, they've played super well recently. They were dogs even as the 6th seed to New Mexico. So they've won back-to-back games outright as a dog. So it's kind of tough to doubt them, especially given the fact that in both of their wins, their best player, their center, PJ Hall, only played 19 minutes in each game due to foul issues. So if he's back and playing his normal 35, 40 minutes like he should be in this game, that's an even better Clemson team than we're going to see in this game against Zona than we saw in the first couple games.
That's fair. Clemson beat Bama, TCU, and North Carolina during the regular season. Arizona played Long Beach State and Dayton in these last couple games, and they played in an okay Pac-12, not as good as years past. Which team do you think is more battle-tested coming into this one?
Yeah, I think I would lean towards Clemson also. Clemson was in an ACC having to play teams like North Carolina, Duke, NC State, who's in the Sweet 16 as well, and have won 7 straight games. So it definitely seems like the ACC is a stronger conference this year than the Pac-12, where Arizona is the last team left standing in the Sweet 16. So I think Clemson.
I think it's time to stick with Clemson. Getting 7.5 points after they're coming off a big win against Baylor, obviously proving that they can win as a dog. I think this is also a spot where I'm going to sprinkle the money line at 280. We're not going to have many more opportunities like this to get plus odds at that rate. So I'm going to ride Clemson with the points and sprinkle the money line.
I agree with you. I'm on Clemson and the points as well. They've played well enough that I feel very confident in how they're playing. And given the fact that PJ Hall, their best player, should get more minutes in this game, feels good like they're in a good spot here.
Well, our next game is a bigger spread. UConn, the 1 seed against San Diego State, the 5 seed. 11 points. Last year, obviously, these two teams played in the national championship, and UConn won by 17. But how similar are these rosters, and does last year's game give you any idea about how this one's going to go?
These rosters are pretty similar to last year, right? Each team has lost a couple guys, a couple seniors, plus Jordan Hawkins from UConn going to the NBA. But they were able to replace them perfectly fine. UConn got Cam Spencer as a transfer. They got Donovan Clingan to step up and replace Sanogo. And San Diego State got Jaden Ledee, who's really emerged this season as the number 1 threat. And he came off the bench last year in the national championship game. So both these teams, I think, have pretty similar rosters from last year, but they've managed to replace the guys they've lost pretty well.
Yeah, last week, one of your favorite plays was UConn against Northwestern. And I was at the restaurant eating, so I wasn't paying attention to my phone. I didn't see that was a play, and I didn't put it in. And then obviously, Northwestern got crushed, UConn covered, and I was kicking myself for not winning money with you. I'm not going to miss that opportunity this week. I'm assuming you're going to play UConn again, since 11 points, it's 11 points, but they're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the entire tournament. So I will ride the 11 here. Not going to do anything with the money line since the odds are too big, but UConn minus 11 is a great play.
Yeah, 11 points is 11 points, but since the start of February, so the last 2 months of play, UConn is 13-1, and they only have 2 wins, plus obviously the loss, that were not by double digits. So 10 out of the last 13 games, they would have covered this number. Their offense is just on fire. Their defense is amazing as well. They've dominated their 2 games in the tournament. They dominated the Big East tournament. It's really just tough to see me fading them right now with how hot they're playing. They dominated last year in the national championship game with defense, and I think that their defense is probably going to be similar this game. San Diego State has looked great, and it's all been on the back of Jaden Ledee at center. But Donovan Clingan is a tough matchup to go against. The guy had 8 blocks against Northwestern. I don't think Ledee is going to be able to dominate him one-on-one in the post. He'll still be able to get points, but I would definitely be concerned about the shooting percentage there and how it's going to affect the rest of the team's offense. I think UConn should be able to roll here again.
Yeah, and their defense obviously is reflected in the total being so low at only 136. And if you do want to take the total or the spread in this game, you can bet for free from any state in the U.S. If you click the link in the description box below, go to BroThrow.com/YouTube. That's where Jake and I take all of our bets. The odds are at plus 100, which means you bet $20, you win 20, and that's on the spread or the total. And the money line odds are the best you'll find online anywhere, better than any casino or sports book. So check out BroThrow if you haven't signed up there yet, because Jake and I bet there basically every single day that March Madness is going on, and I've been betting NIT games as well. So plenty of options to bet on the site. Our next game is Bama and North Carolina. North Carolina, the 1 seed. Bama, the 4 seed, and it's a 4-point spread. UNC is one of the most bet teams this round, and Bama's getting almost no love. And I noticed that in the first round of 64, that when the public was on one side, I needed to be on the other. But then that changed, and the public started crushing it with favorites in the round of 32. So is UNC a red flag with so much of the money backing them?
It always depends how much the money is, right? Whenever I see the number get above 90%, then I start to think, okay, the public generally is not going to hit when they're all on one side. But I don't necessarily think that this game is one to be like, oh, North Carolina is getting so much action on them, it's a must fade. I think, though, when you look at the game, it maybe opens up a little bit to fading them just on the implications of the game, right? Alabama has been very, very hot so far in this NCAA tournament. They're normally known as an offensive team, right? They got a top 5 offense, one of the fastest paces of play. Nate Oates is a great coach who really exemplifies the modern offensive strategy of running up and down the court as fast as you can, firing as many threes as you can, and just trying to push the number of possessions, push the pace, push the score. But last game against Grand Canyon is also a very offensive focused team that plays at a fast pace. And that game went 40 points below the over-under. Bama held them to 60 points. Their defense really came through and won there. So if Bama's defense is kind of turning a corner, and we've seen other games in the regular season that their defense has been impressive. It's not like this is a one-off type thing. So I think Bama may be riding a little bit into form, and we know their offense is great. I think this could be a really fun game here.
Yeah, speaking of that GCU game, it was really close in the last 3 minutes there. I think it was like a 2 or 3 point game, and then Bama obviously pulled away and won by 11 at the end. UNC, on the other hand, hasn't had this sweat yet, and they haven't really been tested. I think a lot of people are giving them too much credit for that MSU win, and they forget that MSU was a 9 seed for a reason. I think everyone just loves to say that Tom Izzo was the automatic play getting points, which I just don't believe that to be true, and UNC proved it not to be the case. But what do you think? Is UNC not being tested going to be tougher for them to get up for this game? And does Bama, now that they're playing one of the best teams left in the tournament, have a lot more motivation? And do they show up in a different way than they did against GCU?
I think both teams have a lot of motivation. Right? Keep in mind, this is a UNC team that has a lot of players from 2 years ago when they did make it to the Final Four in Hubert Davis's first season as coach. And Bama was the number 1 overall seed last year, and they lost Brandon Miller, but that's really about it. So they returned most of the team from last season. So I think both these teams really, really, really want this game. And I think what's going to come down to in terms of motivation is coaching. And I like Nate Oates better than Hubert Davis. Maybe I'm just wrong there, but I trust him more as a coach. I like him better. I would lean towards Alabama +4 here. I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I mean, look at the over-under at 173.5. Obscenely high for a team like North Carolina that has the number 6 ranked defense in the country. That to me says that the books think that it's going to favor Bama's play style, and I kind of agree with them.
Then I'm on Bama +4. I think all your points are right, and I like riding Bama right now. Next up, we've got Illinois and Iowa State. Illinois, one of my favorite teams. They're coming in hot after some big conference wins, and as a double-digit favorite in their first 2 games, they scored at least 85 in each of those matchups. Do you think they're due to cool down on scoring, or are their weapons on offense too tough for Iowa State to defend?
Illinois has won 10 out of their last 11 games. Their only loss being to Purdue, who is, again, one of the best teams in the country. And that was a close competitive game. And in those wins, and actually in all those games, they've scored 70 plus in every single game and 90 plus in 8 out of those 11 games. So their offense has been on absolute fire, led by Terrence Shannon, who's been arguably the best player in the country over the last month. And for me, it's really tough to see Illinois' offense slowing down. They've got guys who can do it outside of Shannon, guys in Damask, Coleman Hawkins, even Dane Danger in the post. And their offense is moving up to the point that they are now the number 1 ranked offense in the country. Iowa State has the number 1 ranked defense in the country. So you got strength on strength. It should be an incredible matchup here. But I think Illinois has just been insanely hot right now. And I think Iowa State's going to have some trouble stopping their offense.
Well, you're talking about how hot Illinois is, but Iowa State's been really hot too. They're on a 5-game win streak that includes 3-seed Baylor, 1-seed Houston, and 7-seed Washington State. So who do you think's trending up at the right time?
They both are, as you said. Both teams are playing really, really well. They've both moved to the number 1 overall category in their respective offense and defense. So it's tougher really to say which one is hotter. I guess I would say Illinois is slightly hotter, given that if you look at their most recent loss, theirs is to Purdue versus Iowa State's is to Kansas State. So, much better competition that they lost to in Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois, the number 1 offense, like you said, Iowa State, the number 1 defense. But Illinois has proven that they can hang with the elite defenses. They put up over 80 on Rutgers and Michigan State, and those are 2 top 8 defenses in the country. So I think I'm going to ride Illinois in this spot since I know they can score when it matters the most.
I agree. I'm riding with Illinois. They've played in a very competitive Big Ten where a lot of teams are defensive focused with very physical play styles. So I think they're going to be used to the style of play that Iowa State can bring. And again, if you look at the over-under, it's at 146 with a close spread. They're projecting the score to be in the early 70s. Iowa State getting to the early 70s, I think, is asking a lot for their offense, especially if they're allowing Illinois to do the same. I think if it gets to that high of a total, it definitely favors Illinois.
Next up, we've got Duke and Houston. Houston, the 1 seed, Duke, the 4 seed. 4-point spread, very similar to that Alabama-North Carolina matchup. But Duke's off a 40-point blowout win over JMU. Houston needed overtime to put A&M away in the last round. Does that last round make you think this will be a tighter game, or is Houston just better on paper across the entire season?
It was both discouraging and encouraging, I think, for Houston with their performance against Texas A&M, because it was very discouraging to see their defense play so poorly. This is the number 2 ranked overall defense in the country. In fact, they played Texas A&M earlier this season and only gave up 66 points. So then to give up 95 points in this game, 50% more, is a very, very poor performance from them. But the fact that they were able to have such a bad defensive game, which is their strength, they were able to overcome, get the job done in overtime when they had so many guys fouled out. They ended up having 4 players on the team fouled out by the end of that game. So the fact that they were still able to get the dub, I think, is huge for their momentum. Duke, as you said, is playing phenomenally, back-to-back blowouts. So I can see why people might want to be on them right now with how well they've played. But this game is also in Dallas. So Houston should have a great fan advantage, a great home field advantage here. Should be a really fun, entertaining game.
I saw a stat that said Duke's 21-0 when their opponents hit fewer than 46%, and Houston only hits 43%. So their defense might be enough to win the game, but how do you think their offense matches up?
If Duke's offense is rolling, it may be tough for Houston's offense to keep up. I do like their offense in general, though. They got Jamal Shed at point guard, and this guy is one of the best passing point guards in the entire country. He had 10 assists against Texas A&M last game. He is the 5th highest assister in the entire country, averaging 40% of the assists for the entire team. And the guy just, it seems like he's always finding the open guy, getting guys in perfect position. And they've got good enough shooters on the outside that they get the ball to them and they hit open shots. They definitely are more reliant on their defense to win. And, again, with his 134 over under, if the game gets into the 70s and 80s, I think it's going to be very difficult for Houston to keep up. So I think Houston's going to have to rely on their defense in this spot.
I saw that Ken Palm projects this to be a 3-point win for Houston. And since I think Duke could potentially win this one outright, I'm going to take the points in this spot. I'm going to sprinkle the money line, but my main play is going to be Duke +4.
Yeah, I'm riding Houston here. The fact that Duke has been so hot and Houston kind of had a fight for their survival, I think actually trends better for Houston. They're a little bit of maybe regression coming for Duke. It's going to be tough for me to think they can play 3 dominant games in a row. Plus the home court advantage, this game being in Dallas, should have a huge fan base here for Houston. I think their defense is too strong. I expect it to bounce back with a vengeance in this game. I'm riding Houston -4.
Well, another really tough one to pick is going to be Creighton and Tennessee. Creighton +3. And last week, I took Tennessee to cover 6.5 against Texas. They played horribly, still won that game by 4. But the fact that they still won really showed that even on their bad days, they're a tough team to beat. Creighton, on the other hand, needed double overtime to pull away from Oregon. So does this line seem right, or is Creighton being such a short dog pointing that they should be the play?
I think this is a very fair line. When I was filling out my bracket, I was on stream and I was lamenting over this game for a long time. I thought this was by far the hardest game of the entire bracket to pick. I think these two teams are incredibly even. I think they are both incredibly skilled. In fact, if they were in different brackets, I might have both them in my final 4. Unfortunately, they have to play each other right now. And I think the line is pretty fair. Tennessee, yes, they didn't have the best performance against Texas offensively, but this is still a team with a number 3 overall defense and a guy in Dalton Knecht who is one of the best offensive players in the entire country. When he gets hot, he is almost impossible to stop. On the contrary, if he's not playing well, like he did against Texas, like he did against Mississippi State, it's tough for Tennessee to kind of come back and win. So the fact that they won with him shooting 5 of 18 against Texas, I think is a great sign. Creighton, I'm again not super concerned about. Oregon, really good team. They won the Pac-12 tournament. They've been playing hot. And they had 2 guys in Dante and Kuznar that were just playing absolutely awesomely in that game. But again, I'm going to give more credit to Creighton for fighting through and finding a way to win that game.
Yeah, they hit 15 threes against Oregon. Does Tennessee's defense find a way to slow that down, or does Creighton just have too many shooters on offense?
So that's Creighton's strategy. They are the number 7 team in the country in terms of 3-point field goals attempted per game, and they're number 11 at point distribution coming from the 3. So that is 100% their strategy. They want to fire threes. And regardless of Tennessee's good defense, they're probably going to end up hitting at least, 35% of them. Their average on the season is 36.6%. And while Tennessee does have a very, very strong 3-point defense, only allowing 31%, if they're firing 30, 40 threes in a game, even if you're only hitting 30%, that's still going to add up, especially if Tennessee is going to be cold themselves.
Yeah, this is a really tough one to pick for me. Tennessee's a team who I liked coming into the tournament, but just feels like they kind of slowed down. And I'm not sure if they're playing basketball at the wrong time or what. If you look at their last few games, they had that 4-point win against Texas, but then they beat St. Peter's. And the last 2 SEC games of the year were losses to Kentucky and Mississippi State. Not that those are bad teams, but they haven't had any significant wins of recent. I'm going to hope that means they're due to start playing better. And I'm going to take Tennessee in this spot. But honestly, this is a toss-up, and I don't know which way to lean.
Creighton has a very, very interesting defensive play style. They are last in the country at getting turnovers, dead last in the country getting turnovers. But they are also first in the country at not allowing free throws. They don't go for steals basically whatsoever. They play very, very clean. They don't foul. They don't allow you to get to the free throw line. As a result, the way to beat them is then you have to make jump shots. Tennessee, when Knecht is not hitting, it's very difficult for them to be consistently hitting jump shots. And if he is hitting, the rest of the team sometimes struggles. So I think that Knecht is going to have a master class for them to win this game. And that's why I'm taking Creighton, because while I do love Knecht, I think too much has to happen on his shoulders for Tennessee to win. I'm taking Creighton plus the points here.
All right. Well, Jake, our brackets are alive. Our picks hopefully hit this week and hopefully go better than 50%. But either way, we're betting on BroThrow, so there is no VIG. And if we break even, we don't lose any money. So thank you for your picks. I'm excited. We'll make another video for the Final Four and then obviously the national championship game. But until then, I'll talk to you this week and I'll be on your stream watching to see what you think about the games leading up to the day of.
Sounds good. I'll see you there. Peace.